Okay, hello everybody. Move on to the next session, impact of technology on your people. My name's David Opie. I've got Ian McCann to my right, I've got Mike Lehman, and I've got Lloyd Davis here on the panel with me. I made quite a number of notes about what I was going to say, and I've ripped them up 2 or 3 times already because, of course, since Friday, all hell has broken loose. So we'll just launch right in. We've got an Sdlt change. We've got stamp duty rates rising. We've got interest rates rising. And this panel are going to talk about what the impact of technology on staff has been in that time, and obviously moving forward. Mike, I'm going to come to you first with my first question. Looking back, what impact did the Sdlt holiday, in inverted commas, have on your staff? And what do you anticipate this time round, crystal balls?
I think, as we all know, don't we, that effectively they're battered and bruised for the past couple of years. And even though there's been no stamp duty holiday this year, it's still been a very capacity-driven market. So it's been a struggle, but technology certainly played a part in helping my teams. We are very tech-savvy as a firm. We're very advanced in relation to our use of technology. I'm looking forward to seeing where we are on the survey from InfoTrack. That'll be interesting in terms of the feedback we get. So we see technology as a bit of an enabler. Enables our people to do things smarter. We all know the nightmare of logging into several different portals and doing things in many different ways. So the simplification of processes and simplification of workflows is really key in relation to that, which meant they could spend more time working with clients, building relationships with clients, which has been key to maintaining service levels through a very difficult time. But I think the biggest problem with that has been touched on several times today is expectations about control in relation to the general public. Amazon's been mentioned, that next day delivery, the pizza coming in 10, 15 minutes. So clients want to be kept informed, want to be updated. And even though we've got technology and portals and mobile phone apps, they still need a hands holding. And they want to communicate a lot with you, and that takes resources. So people are at the brunt of that. And when those expectations are unrealistic, it's our people who take, obviously, the stick that goes with that, that it's their fault. Things aren't moving along, and we know it's a complicated process. There's many different wheels and cogs to that wheel in relation to how that transaction goes made to be, and we're not in control of a lot of it. So it's been really tough and difficult. In terms of the future, well, who knows? I mean, it's changed since this morning. It's changed since yesterday, as Nick was saying from LMS. It's a moving beast. I don't think the stamp duty announcements would have made much difference, if I'm honest. The market probably didn't need stimulating. It's still quite busy. But I think anything will help in terms of the support when there's a recession on the horizon, and everyone thinks that is going to be the scenario we're facing. But I think interest rates will certainly trump that in terms of any effect, and we have no idea what's going to happen as a consequence of that. But we'll try and support our people as best we can using technology along the way.
There's lots of nodding on the panel. Ian, perhaps you want to come in on that.
Yeah, I think that the kind of the impact that I saw from the market is, as you said, Mike, essentially what happened is we'd lost the boundaries in relation to that period, so that the people had the combination of time at home, a cliff edge element that was going to lead to a financial loss, and what that meant is that everybody was engaged all the time and had the time to be engaged all of the time in this process, and the frustration was there, all the challenges were there, and there's been various surveys done of the kind of property profession and the conveyancing profession specifically during lockdown, with the challenges that everyone within that sector had, valuers, estate agents and conveyancers, around bluntly the kind of the burnout, the working, and my thing that I keep saying all the time is, bluntly, the next pandemic, particularly in our industry, is going to be a mental health one. We've got to keep on top of the reality that our people have worked really bloody hard for an awfully long time, and we need to use all of these enablers that we've got to take the pressure off them on the simple stuff to allow them to do their actual job. And I don't think that the recent changes, as you said, are going to make a huge difference to that, because there is no cliff edge. But when we inevitably get the interest rate changes, that pressure is going to be brought to bear again on the people in the middle of the transaction, and that's going to be the lawyers.
I guess those sort of interest rate pressures are already amongst us, aren't they? I mean, we've seen it, haven't we, with mortgage lenders, you know, changing the parameters of lending if there are problems or if mortgages expire. So again, you know, they're already there, aren't they? I think it's a good thing that it was made permanent. I don't think any of us could have taken any more cliff-edge deadlines. I think it was terrible, wasn't it? I think in 2021 with sort of 5 deadlines, including 2 Christmases, and, you know, it was really tough, wasn't it? I mean, what we've noticed as well is that timelines have gone out this year, and I think they sort of moved from sort of 16 to 20 weeks, whereas the last couple of years, surprisingly enough, they've actually been at 16 weeks, and I think the Sdlt deadlines had a lot to do with that. So they were very, very good for business, but awful for staff well-being, as you've alluded to. And trying to look after the staff then has been quite a challenge for us all, isn't it? I think, you know, with them working from home, and, you know, that in itself brings on its own challenge because they tend to work too hard, I think.
Yeah, and that's the thing that you know, that there's this kind of myth in relation to home working or remote working, and people, you know, Microsoft did a survey that was released this week saying most managers think that home workers work less, whereas actually the reality is that they're working considerably more. They're overworking, and the difficulty we had during lockdown was getting people to stop.
Yeah.
And you know, it's a different kind of pressure that you've got to be aware of and you've got to recognise in order to be able to assist.
I think there's a big evolution, hasn't there, in terms of the way we work, the way people behave. The pandemic in itself has changed many things, some for the better, some for the worse. And will it go back to the way it was before? Probably not. But we all know people are our biggest asset, the most important part of your business. And you need to ensure you're investing in them, not just in terms of their professional development, but also their welfare, their well-being. And yeah, the working from home piece is difficult. There are ways around means to deal with that. But making sure they're in a supportive environment where they're happy and work and enjoying the job, which is difficult when you've got clients' expectations you can't match. But if you try and make it a good place to work, a good environment, then hopefully you'll retain some talent rather than us losing talent and people not wanting to go into conveyancing.
Well, so what role does technology play in supporting the staff, you know, minimising burnout, improving well-being? Ian, you've talked about the fact that it was getting people to stop working. I mean, Lloyd, presumably you can see when people are logging on and logging off, and you can monitor that?
Yeah, and we do, although I think the best thing that's come out of COVID actually is that trust between employer and employee. You know, we had to trust them, didn't we? Before, we've always made them come into the office. We knew they were there, so we, you know, presumed they were working, whereas now they're at home. I mean, we've got 100, I think it's 170 staff and only 60 in the office. You know, a number of them we haven't actually seen for nearly 2 years, apart from the odd Christmas party and bits and pieces that we managed to fit in, you know. So it is that sort of trust element, I think, that has been very, very important. But yes, technology does play a part. We can see when they're logging in, logging off. But in terms of looking after them as well, technology plays a big part in managing capacity. And I think, you know, that's the most important thing, I think, if we're trying to look after our staff, is not to give them too much work. And that's been quite difficult over the last 2 years, isn't it? You know, again, you know, hopefully it'll be a similar problem that we have with a good market going forward. But it's certainly been turning the work down, and actually, without having the transparency of seeing how well they're doing, how long transactions are taking, you know, because actually that sort of has a variable in terms of how much work you give them, you know, and what they can cope with, as well as sort of reading client service reviews, etc. We sort of monitor everyone. Every client's asked to fill in a questionnaire with a sort of Esther's questions on to monitor how well they're performing, and that tells us then whether or not we've got problems. You know, so technology is very important with that. That's emailed out to the clients and it comes back in and it goes on different platforms and things. So actually that's quite an important barometer. And that's all technology based as well. So you just get a feeling for how people are doing. But without the technology, you just wouldn't have that.
That works really well. We do something very similar in relation to that, touch points through a transaction. And that gives you an indication, A, how you're performing as a business and as a team, but also enables you to perhaps pick up on something in terms of a colleague who's perhaps suffering or isn't in a good frame of mind. Because when you look at some of the complaints, often it's about communication, levels of communication, tone in terms of that sort of communication. It's really a good tool. And again, that technology piece, that enabling them to work smarter, not harder, which is really important when they're trying to deal with capacity and trying to deal with people with those sort of transaction deadlines and the concerns from the public, because they're worried about will just mortgage offer get pulled, will things change, will it get gazumped? And the longer the chain takes, the bigger those pressures can build sometimes. So there's a lot of play, and I think it was said earlier that, I think it was Paul in fact, said that we become social workers sometimes to our clients. And so from our point of view as a law firm, we only deal with private client work, but we deal with different facets of it. There's all distressed legal services. So we know what it's like to look after those sorts of clients, but then in turn we've got to look after our people who are dealing with the brunt of clients in difficult situations.
Yeah, I think that you know, for us, we're a slightly different type. We're what you'd call a platform firm. So we're a consultant-based solicitor. Our solicitors, you know, basically set up their own legal businesses and transact through us. So actually, our first client is our lawyer, and then the end user client. And so it's kind of trying to make sure that you've got that. I mean, the technology, you know, even down to as simple as, again, it's how you use the tech, not the existence of the tech. So, you know, throughout the pandemic and still, we have a weekly drop-in for everybody, you know, within the team for a social conversation. It's 11 o'clock on a Thursday. It's not exactly riveting. Mostly it's about reality TV and what silly things people have got up to that week. But it's the people that aren't there. And it's spotting that, you know, well, why aren't you that? You're in charge of your own workload, how you're doing it, that's great. But, you know, if a week goes by and I haven't actually heard, why is that? What's going on? What's your capacity? You know, it's not my job necessarily to manage you managing your own business, but it is my job to spot, actually, I haven't seen you on the Teams platform. You haven't been on the call. You know, we haven't seen, why is that? You know, are you okay? Not in a, I'm going to tell you off about it, but in a, are you all right? Is there anything we can help with?
Technology has helped, hasn't it, in that respect? And actually, you know who's missing, don't you? You're quite right. And who's got their screens on and who hasn't, who's hiding behind the sofa, and you know, that sort of thing. But you know, it certainly has, hasn't it? It's helped us with Teams, I think, you know, both with our clients, but also very much with, you know, the conveyancing team and the people that we work with. We've used an intranet system as well, where, you know, we're sort of, as opposed to emailing everyone with all of the information, it sits on a, and we've invested quite heavily in that, so that all of the good news is sort of pushed on there, and different opportunities and training and things. But certainly as well, the use of video, I think, you know, has really come into the fore, I think, in the last couple of years, especially with training, you know, without having this sort of forum with people in the room. You know, we've had to look at other ways, and actually, it's, you know, it's hugely time-saving, isn't it? You don't have to do the same seminars time and time again.
It's more accessible.
You know, there are massive benefits to it, and you get a consistent message. So, you know, there have been some real positives.
If I can just drill into something you've said there, Ian, then. So I understand where you guys are coming from, thinking about the staff welfare, all that kind of thing. We've got a question here which is sort of broadly along the lines of my question, which is technology actually addressing the issue, or are we squeezing more out of people than they can actually deliver? Is technology actually helping us to squeeze more out of people?
I think there's a huge risk that technology is used as a sticking plaster for an arterial bleed. And, you know, that's the real risk, is that people go, you know, they mentioned in the previous panel about, well, we can automate 1 in 4. So you've got 25% more time right back. Great, well, I'll give you 10 more cases. That's the can I say that's not happening? No, well, I know it's happening. I know there are firms out there that are happening. I mean, you know, Codex Edge, who do, they're a recruitment company who look at kind of areas of recruitment for particularly the areas that move onto platform firms like ours. The top 2 areas are resi conveyancing and commercial property, for people that are moving to set up and manage their own workloads and time, because they want that freedom and flexibility to do less. Now, that can't be entirely a pull factor. There must be a push there. There just must be. So we've got to balance that, how we use it. I think that bluntly comes down to management actually looking at this and going, yes, I can get 10 more cases out of you. I can. But actually, if I use the tech to reduce, like has been said, you know, throughout today, reduce the simplistic tasks, start to split up the work that is done, and actually get so that your conveyancer, your property lawyer, is making the judgment calls, giving the advice, and doing that part social worker, part counsellor, part, you know, fire juggler bit that is the reality of the job. You get a fulfilled, happy lawyer, and they are better. And I can say I know they're better because I've looked at what we get in terms of the feedback we get, the responses, the kind of the client satisfaction surveys. they're better for clients, but they're also better for themselves, their friends, their families. And then you get a better service from that. So we've got to make sure we use the tech for good as opposed to going, yeah, fantastic, let's just keep piling it in, because I do know that is happening.
Depends on your mindset, doesn't it? The mindset is technology will drive through efficiency, therefore we need quick capacity.
Yep.
We use technology effectively client first, so we're trying to ensure that the client digital journey and the client journey through the transaction is as good as can be to match your expectations. But at the same time, as I said before, to enable our team to do a better, more fulfilling job. And what we found is, as we've used technology more and grown on that digital journey the last 5 or 6 years, our teams have increased in size, which goes against the efficiencies and having less people, we've actually doubled in size. So I think if you have the right mindset in relation to why you engage in technology, you'll use it for good. But you're right, it can also be used for bad as well.
It's interesting, isn't it? I mean, I don't think responsible firms squeeze their people until the pipsqueak, do they? I mean, and you can't. And I mean, we've seen that, I mean, I'm going back sort of 15 years ago, but I mean, I would say the capacities back then were greater than what they are now. Certainly when I was practicing, I was exchanging on similar, but with, when I look at the tech that these guys have now and the different departments that are helping throughout the process, as you say, Mike, it's all about customer service. So I think what's happened with most legal practices is that you've got the tech, but you're using the tech to enhance the client service. Things are very different, aren't they? And I think certainly, as Ian said, just, with Amazon and everything else, everyone expects everything yesterday. If someone sends you an email, you've got to respond within minutes, let alone hours. Days is something like, it's unheard of. Whereas before, obviously, we were a lot more paper-based. So I think, that the tech is very much being used, but I don't, certainly in our case, it's very much a case of trying to, provide a better service as opposed to anything else.
You're very short-sighted, aren't you, in terms of burning out your staff, because we know there's an issue in terms of recruitment, there's an issue in terms of retention, there's an issue with regard to future conveyances. So if you're going to have that mindset and treat people in that way, then it's a slippery slope, isn't it? There's only one way that practice is going to go eventually, isn't it? You want to look after people on a basis you're going to be able to recruit because you know you're a good employer. That you get looked after. There's progression. There's like cultures, heart and soul of the business. All those things have such an important place in today's society.
This might be a controversial question, and by the way, the audience can ask questions. I've got one here, and we've got a little bit of time at the end for a Q&A as well. Is this a division of labour issue? Actually, if you want somebody to answer the telephone, you assign somebody to answer the telephone, whilst at the same time somebody's doing the conveyance. You're not asking the same person to do that thing. And the question is, expectations are difficult to manage. Conveyances are inundated by phones and emails, often leading to work being done after hours. I think we've all seen that. How can this be avoided? Is it a division of labour issue?
I think you can. I think that there is absolutely a historical mindset that you have one file, one fee earner, one process, and it starts with them, it stays with them, and it ends with them. I think you just don't get the benefit of the efficiency of that. I mean, for the sake of example, we use an electronic client onboarding system. I know onboarding has been talked about significantly throughout the day, but that's app-based. It's ID verification, etc. But there is the provider that we use, which is Infotrack. But sorry, shameless plug, but it is. They have a compliance assistance helpline that is open 9 o'clock in the morning till 8 o'clock at night. Now, I can't deliver that with what I just can't. So training our team of going, look, we open the file, then you just pass it over to them. You've got to, because otherwise nothing's going to do that. If you need somebody to answer those queries, the agents have come up a lot today. I'm not going to start with that. But if you have got can I get an update, please, dedicated email address or phone number, well, then you've just suddenly saved a segmented amount of time every day, all day, every day, that you can actually get back onto the judgment, the advice, the dealing with it. I think there's a huge amount of benefit there.
Is it factory conveyancing?
It's not factory conveyancing. What a terrible phrase. But we very much believe in the division of labour, and we've been practising that for over 15 years. So, new business team, manages the sales, opens up the file. We've got a welcome pack team then that issues the contract, looks at ID, and has got the time to do that behind the scenes. We've got a title checking team, which is made up of almost retired conveyancers who really just don't want to answer the phone, but actually really enjoy that element of their work. And then a post-completion team. So, you know, the conveyancer's role is very much client communication. It's all about providing that service and seeing the client through the process. They still have to check the work and they still have to be qualified to do it, but actually they're dealing then with the nuances to get the transactions through. What is that missing document? Can we get insurance? You know, how do we manage this process closer to exchange, etc. So they're very, very focused on getting the client from A to Z as quickly as they can. So, like, actually, I think that's a good role model, and we've seen a lot of people actually step back from the front line, you know, because of the volumes and because of the pressure, because of Amazon sort of culture, and they actually do love that title checking role, and it's been great to sort of save some people from sort of exiting the industry altogether, because that wealth of experience is, you know, is something that, you know, we need to hold on to.
Divisional labour is to be an iteration of that. Effectively, we've got a new business team, onboarding team, who do all that aspect and post-completion, but we have our legal team as a team of 2. And generally, it's the assistant rather than the qualified lawyer who will deal a lot with the phone calls and speaking to the clients about that relationship, allowing the lawyer to focus more on the legal side of the transaction. So there's different iterations of it, and they all seem to work quite well in that respect. You have to put your resources in proper places. We've onboarded the clients in 13 minutes and have been legal ready, which is record-breaking speed, but then once you manage the expectations, you've done that bit so quickly when it's going to take another 13, 14 weeks to do the rest of it sometimes. It's fun and games, isn't it?
I think, you know, there's always that sort of perception of disparity when you've got other people doing the work behind the scenes. We very much work in small cohorts, little families, really, of groups of conveyancers, so they support each other. And I think, you know, that's very, very important as well for staff well-being and, you know, that sense of belonging and helping out and camaraderie, etc. So the big environment becomes quite small and intimate, doesn't it? You know, and everyone knows each other and supports each other.
Whether it's a true Steve Jobs quote or not, he is purported to have said, you know, my job is to play the orchestra. To a certain extent, the perfect conveyancing role is to play the orchestra of the people that you've got in order to get the client through the process as fast as possible. You just get a better sound in that scenario if you do that with all the different teams feeding into ultimately what the process is, which is getting the client from start to finish with the highest quality of service. They don't, however, have to necessarily see what's happening behind them at different parts, but you know, if you divide that labour, you just get a better outcome and you get a happier team in the process.
We're not so far off running out of time, so we've got another question from the audience. How much has client self-serving technology, apps, portals, etc., improved the conveyancer's relationship with clients? Now, I mean, I've heard anecdotally that actually it's very difficult because all that happens is that the steps that the technology advises the client of just generates the phone call. What does this mean? What are the next steps? What happens now? Is that your experience?
It's some clients probably yes, but the majority like the technology, like the explanation of the key stages. We use our app to talk and chat as well, take everything off email, so it's nice and simple and transparent. And we regularly get really high scoring feedback from clients mentioning the app, mentioning the support they get, mentioning the key stages and understanding their journey a little bit better. But then again, we do the whole transaction via that single touch point as well. So it's pretty seamless, so there's less confusion for the client to know who they need to speak to, when they need to speak to them, what they need to do lists and checklists along the way. So it supports them in that journey, but I say not every client is keen to do that process. But
so those
over
apps
90%, they're developing all the time at pace. But as a lawyer, you've got to spend a lot of time on your team and training and making sure they use it properly and get the benefits from it.
I think that's the key, isn't it? Yeah. It's how well they use it and how well they explain what is going on in the transaction. Because if they don't explain it well, then you do get that phone call, don't you? So
here we go. Here's another question. Sorry to cut across you. Do you think that firms that refuse to utilise technology and mandate full-time office work will struggle to attract talent going forward? Here's a loaded question then, sort of connected. What about firms that refuse to use technology? Should they be taken off the CQS? Should they be removed from lender panels? Should they be removed from the conveyancing process?
I think the market will dictate anyway, because the consumer has expectations. And if they go to a firm, we heard the story this morning about a 100-page document going out, and next thing is they've gone to a solicitor who can do it digitally. So I think consumers will dictate
will
the
vote
market.
with their feet?
Yeah, effectively, yeah. I don't think they'll be mandated in any way, shape or form.
Yeah, it'll become self-selecting, yeah, absolutely.
I think we've got a couple of minutes left. Going back to the division of labour point, is there a way that we can build in time where you wouldn't disturb the conveyancer? So you wouldn't disturb a doctor, for example, in the middle of a consultation, should the conveyancer be left to be when checking title?
It's interesting, isn't it? Because, I mean, we, as conveyancers, you're always, we've sort of almost programmed ourselves to answer the phone all the time. Someone walks into reception, it used to be, they can't anymore, but, if they used to walk into reception, we'd go down and see them. You wouldn't do that if you were going to see a dentist, and, likewise, you wouldn't expect to speak to your doctor every time you phoned him. You'd expect him to come back to you within a reasonable period of time.
So you need gatekeepers.
So we're trying to manage client expectations by saying, look, if you want to speak to me, email me, let's make an appointment which is mutually, convenient for both of us. And actually that works really, really well. And it's something that's pioneering, but we're so used to, we've got to keep picking up the phone. I think most of our estate agent friends have told us we've got to do that for so long that we're conditioned to it, I think.
Yeah, lawyers by definition are people pleasers. We've been brought up in a people pleasing industry doing a people pleasing thing. The challenge is that means that actually everybody gets fair to middling as opposed to good. And it is, it's one of the things we're working on, putting in gatekeepers, subdividing various bits and pieces for the property lawyers that we have to basically say, A, you need to build a team, and B, you need to have times when you're in a meeting. Now, that meeting could actually be you're checking title, or it could be you're going to the supermarket. It actually doesn't matter what that meeting is. If you need that time for headspace, call it a meeting. Everybody understands, or should understand, that professionals sometimes have other things. But training the people-pleasing out of lawyers is really hard, because that's how we've always done it.
I think we've got about 30 seconds left, have we? So, in a word, and I think I know what the answer is, how important is training the staff in, one, using the digital tools that are there, and two, actually then passing on that ability to understand the digital tools to the consumer?
I think that's essential.
Key.
100%.
I think that's probably about time. Thanks very much indeed for that. Very, very important point, isn't it? But yes, thanks very much indeed for your time, guys.
Thank you.